It was a relief not to have to keep such a gigantic secret that I had kept for so many years.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the most notorious confessions made throughout history.
Yes or no? Did you ever take banned substances to enhance your cycling performance?
Yes.
Number 30, H.H. Holmes. This admittance cemented him as America's first serial killer. H.H. Holmes dabbled in plenty of petty crime throughout his life, but he had a darker side.
In essence, this is a person who spends a lot of time fantasizing about death and killing. But overall, there's more to this. The killing is actually part of the fulfillment of his fantasy process.
Multiple people had gone missing, leading officials to search his building after he had been arrested for horse theft. Their efforts revealed bone shards and burned pieces of clothing, but it wasn't enough to convict him. He was found guilty and sentenced to death in 1895 for killing his associate Benjamin Peitzel, which was when the truth came out. Holmes confessed to 27 homicides across North America, with his drugstore, the now aptly named Murder Castle, serving as a base.
What Holmes has done is to create really a killing machine, a factory for getting these bodies, for harvesting these individuals who innocently have come into contact with him.
The true scope of his crimes shocked the nation and made his execution in 1896 even more of a spectacle. Number 29, Mark Chopper Reed. When someone has nothing left to lose, the truth finally comes out.
Emotionally, how are you coping with the thought of dying?
Oh, it doesn't even hit me emotionally.
Australian criminal Mark Chopper Reed spent most of his adult life behind bars and was served a life sentence after shooting someone with the intent to kill in 1992. He remained notorious throughout his sentence, keeping the public's attention with commercials and even rap albums. 20 years after his final sentence, he was diagnosed with liver cancer, and the prognosis wasn't good. It was then that he gave one final interview, where he revealed that he had murdered an additional 4 people that he'd never been tried for.
Any remorse, any sort of reflection on that?
No, none at all. None at all. None at all. Absolutely none at all.
The interview aired just weeks after he passed away, causing him to shock the nation one last time. Number 28, Manteo. Catfishing happens often, but it's rare when it happens on a national scale. In 2012, Manteo received nationwide support after he revealed that his grandmother and online girlfriend had both perished in the same weekend.
Of course, he was the star player whose heartbreaking loss of his girlfriend just before a big game made national headlines and made Manteo the individual story of the college football season.
What he and the rest of the country didn't know was that the latter never even existed. An investigation by the sports blog Deadspin revealed the truth, that he had been tricked by someone he considered a friend.
And according to the sports website Deadspin, which broke the story, Lene Kekua was a hoax, and the picture we all saw of her was actually another woman who was very much alive and says she doesn't even know Teo.
Naya Tuiasosopo later confessed to concocting the ruse as a result of her unrequited feelings, and that she'd used her cousin's voice and an acquaintance's photos to succeed. The shocking story was proof that in most cases, you never know who's on the other end of the screen, or if they're being honest. Number 27, Carla Hulka. When her husband Paul Bernardo was first arrested in 1993 on multiple charges, she went to disgusting lengths to exonerate herself.
What was certain, however, was that together, Bernardo and Hulka were a deadly duo.
To secure a plea bargain, Carla Hulka went on the record to claim that she had been forced to participate in his crimes under the threat of physical abuse. This allowed her to only be charged with manslaughter rather than murder. After her initial story, multiple recordings came to light revealing she took part in the drugging, sexual assault, and slaying of 4 women, including her younger sister.
I think that the women in this country in particular never believed a word she said. Didn't like the deal that they made and had a feeling that there was more to Carla Hulka than meets the eye.
Despite the mountain of evidence, her charges didn't change as her end of the bargain had been met. She served her time and was freed in 2005, but the case remains controversial to this day. Number 26, Richard Ramirez. When the Night Stalker had reportedly been identified and arrested, no one knew for sure that they had the right man.
The Night Stalker killed at least 13 times, 13 people who were awakened in the night to face death. At least 15 others survived his brutal attacks.
That is, until he offered that information himself. Richard Ramirez had reportedly confessed multiple times to his crimes, with varying levels of remorse. His first was tearful. His second was the complete opposite. Gone was the seemingly genuine emotion he once displayed, now replaced with him bragging about having killed 20 people in the Golden State. Even more chilling was his explanation, where he simply said that he loved murdering others, and that he loved watching them perish after his attacks. The admission was only a small piece in his conviction, but it proved just how apathetic he was about what he had done.
He had no empathy, no feelings, nothing. He never showed any remorse for what he had done. He wanted to be known as the greatest serial killer that ever.
Number 25, Andre Chicatillo. Some revelations are so horrific that you almost wish they hadn't come to light in the first place. This could definitely be said for Andre Chicatillo, whose arrest in 1990 soon led to a truly vile confession. He described every murder he carried out and spared no details. He seemed to have a bizarre fascination with causing pain, as evidenced by him stabbing his victims at various levels of intensity and even getting pleasure out of their screams. It was more horrific than anyone could have been prepared for, and when those same details were brought to court, several people fainted or broke down upon hearing them.
Families of Chicatillo's victims screamed insults. Some fainted.
Number 24, John Wayne Gasey. For years, he was able to rely on an innocent persona to mask the atrocious crimes he committed.
Meet John Wayne Gasey.
Hey there!
A small-time politician and part-time clown.
Prior to his arrest in 1978, John Wayne Gasey was merely a man with a checkered past who was involved in his community. After he admitted to killing 30 people and burying their remains beneath his home, that perception changed drastically. This had come just hours after investigators had noticed the smell of rotting bodies in his house, cementing their suspicions and allowing them to fully search the crawl space the next day.
A second search warrant is issued, and officers swarm Gasey's ranch-style home and immediately search the crawl space.
Several decomposed bones were found scattered about the area, prompting him to confess a second time. This was all authorities needed to apprehend and try him, where he was sentenced to death. Number 23, Gary Ridgway. At the time of his arrest, he was one of the most infamous killers in United States history.
Gary Ridgway is probably the most prolific serial killer in America, if not the world.
He was a killing machine, a man of extraordinary evil.
Yet without his confession, we would never know just how twisted he truly was. Gary Ridgway's reign of terror lasted for 16 years, and his capture in 2001 ensured that he would remain off the streets for good. It wasn't until 2003 when a plea deal revealed the gory details. The number of admitted kills rose from 48 to 71, and he was candid about how he hated his victims. The revelation spared him from execution, but earned him 49 life sentences. Ridgway is still helping authorities locate the remains, meaning there may still be some secrets that haven't come to light.
We now know she was killed by Gary Ridgway. I spoke with her family on the phone today. They say they appreciate that they now have closure, but they say it's heartbreaking knowing Ridgway is still alive while their loved one is dead.
Number 22, Albert Fish. When Grace Budd's mother received a letter from an unknown sender in 1934, she could have never guessed what horrors lay inside. The message was deceptively cordial, with the writer explaining a morbid trip he had taken to China and how he'd been inspired to recreate it. He then described how he had taken Grace to an undisclosed location, killed her, and eaten her remains. The letter was from Albert Fish, a serial killer with a proclivity for human flesh. That wasn't his only vile admission. In a separate note, Fish detailed how he killed Billy Gaffney and how he utilized or cooked each specific body part afterwards. Despite not a single word being said, it remains one of the most macabre confessions ever made. Number 21, Dennis Rder. With his vicious spree lasting over 3 decades, any confession from him would have been shocking.
When BTK came forward, everybody's life changed. He would see a woman walking and he would say, "She's next."
However, no one could have guessed just how in-depth Dennis Rader's revelations would be. While on the stand at his trial, he described each of his murders from beginning to end. He spoke about them in an unapologetic, casual manner, as if he was simply recalling a memory of a slightly unpleasant night. Every detail, from how the acts he carried out were a perverse fantasy to the nonchalant way he described each assault, strangulation, and stabbing, only added to the horror. It sealed his sentence, earning him at least 175 years that he's still serving today.
Rder was sentenced to 10 consecutive life sentences with a minimum term of 175 years. He remains in solitary confinement, where he will stay for the rest of his life.
Number 20, the Nazi gold train. With all the atrocities committed during World War II, it only makes sense that some crimes would slip through the cracks.
Ever since the end of the Second World War, there have been rumors of hidden treasure, the fabled Nazi gold.
For decades, there were tales of a train filled with gold and other riches that had been hidden by Nazi soldiers. For a long time, it was considered to be only a legend. That all changed in 2015, when two men claimed to have heard a deathbed confession that revealed the exact location. They even had proof of a deep, man-made hole with unidentified objects inside. Interest in the story skyrocketed, and the hunt for the treasure began.
They remain convinced that it probably shows a hidden armored train. It shows regular rectangular structures.
After several years, nothing has been found yet, but the search still lives on.
The crucial point is, the scientists could not detect enough metal in the hill for a train to be inside it.
Number 19, Israel Keyes. A career criminal, Israel Keyes committed many serious felonies and killed at least 3 people between the mid-90s and early 2010s.
Yeah, bit of a drive. That was a 3-hour drive. Where they were at. Yeah, in all fairness, I never set up a specific day.
Keyes was arrested after killing a woman named Samantha Koenig and was extradited to Alaska, where the crime occurred. In Alaska, Keyes provided a detailed and graphic confession to law enforcement.
Back when I was smart, I would let them come to me.
Not only were the words horrible, but his behavior signified an uncomfortable air of menace. He calmly relayed some grotesque stories while eating a bagel and drinking coffee, like he didn't have a care in the world.
Not much to choose from, in a manner of speaking, but there's also no witnesses, really.
The FBI special agent who interviewed Keyes later called his confession, quote, very chilling. And that's coming from a professional who hears these types of stories every day.
There is no one who knows me, or who has ever known me, who knows anything about me, really.
Number 18, Elizabeth Wetloffer.
She went to work, she enjoyed her work, she was an RN.
Hailing from Ontario, Canada, Elizabeth Wetloffer was one of the most active serial killers in the country's history. Between 2007 and 2016, while working as a nurse at long-term care homes, Wetloffer murdered 8 senior citizens by injecting them with lethal doses of insulin. She made unsuccessful attempts on the lives of 6 others, but the intended victims survived as the insulin doses administered were insufficient.
You have a portion on the 4th page here, and it's titled People Who Didn't Die. What can you tell me about?
Surprisingly, the only reason Wetloffer was caught was because she decided to come clean. Apparently seeking redemption, she committed herself to a Toronto psychiatric hospital and admitted her shocking crimes to the staff. They promptly notified the police, to whom Wetloffer gave a more detailed confession.
And then that night I overdosed her. Because, like I said, I had that feeling that it was her time to go. And
what do you mean by that? Do you think she was towards the end of her life at that point?
No, that she was the person to go next.
She was handed 8 concurrent life sentences.
It wasn't so much that I wanted her to die, it was more let's see what happens.
Number 17, Tiger Woods. The personal life of Tiger Woods came under intense scrutiny in 2009 when he became the subject of an infidelity scandal.
I said, "You're married." Nonchalantly, he said, "Yeah, I'm married." Like, so he didn't make it as to be a big deal.
Rumors had already been circulating in the press about a possible affair when, on November 27th, Woods crashed his SUV while leaving home around 2:30 a.m., sparking numerous questions and suspicions. On December 2nd, he released a vague statement apologizing for unclear and unspecific, quote, transgressions.
Now, every one of you has good reason to be critical of me.
However, as the days went by, several women came forward claiming to have had relationships with Woods. It all proved too much for the golf star, and on December 11th, he finally confessed to being unfaithful.
I hurt my wife, my kids, my mother, my wife's family, my friends.
The debacle resulted in his divorce and significantly impacted his performance on the green, which he took years to overcome.
For all that I have done, I am so sorry.
Number 16, Naomi Sheam. Jerusalem of Gold is an important song in its native Israel, often regarded as an unofficial national anthem. Unfortunately, it also comes with some degree of controversy.
אוויר הרים צלול כיין וריח אורני.
For years, singer-songwriter Naomi Sheam was accused of plagiarizing the melody, but she repeatedly denied those allegations. That is, until she was dying of cancer and confessed to fellow musician Gil Aldema that she had in fact plagiarized the tune.
ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור.
It came from an old lullaby called Peo Hoshepe, which she heard at a concert in 1962. Shemer claimed to have unconsciously lifted the melody from memory, having loved it so much. However, she regretted it to the very end, even suggesting that the endless stress may have contributed to her fatal illness. Number 15, Edmund Keer.
It started with surrogates at a non-human level. Physical objects, my possessions, other people's.
One of the most notorious American serial killers, Edmund Keer murdered 10 people by the age of 24, including his own mother and grandparents. Keer was imprisoned twice for these crimes, both as a result of his own confession. After killing his grandparents, he informed his mother, who instructed him to call the police. He then confessed that he, quote, just wanted to see what it felt like to kill grandma. Keer was released on parole and resumed his murderous activities soon after.
And I sensed everybody in the world just stopping what they were doing, turning around, saw what I did, and are coming to get me. And I knew I was paranoid.
His spree, which resulted in the deaths of his mother and 7 others, came to an end when Keer called the police to confess. When asked why he turned himself in, Keer coldly explained that killing was, quote, a pure waste of time.
Now, would you get in the car with this man? Huh?
Number 14, Richard Klinsky.
How many people have you killed?
Mystery continues to shroud Richard Klinsky, an American career criminal who murdered at least 5 people.
More than 100.
For example, Klinsky claims to have worked as a hitman for the mafia, but investigators have been unable to verify this. He also asserts that he killed up to 200 people, but only 5 deaths have officially been linked to him. Back in 1988, Klinsky was found guilty of 4 murders and sentenced to life in prison.
Actually, it was just seeing if it would work.
What was he doing at the time?
Looking at me.
However, in 2001, during an interview for the HBO documentary The Iceman Confesses, Klinsky dropped a bombshell, admitting to the 1980 killing of NYPD officer Peter Calabro. Prosecutors later corroborated this story, resulting in 30 more years being added to Klinsky's sentence.
Did you think of yourself as an assassin?
Assassin. Sounds so exotic. I was just a murderer.
Number 13, Christian Sperling. Who the heck is Christian Sperling, you ask? Well, heard of a little creature called the Loch Ness Monster? Back in 1934, the famous surgeon's photograph was published in the Daily Mail, and while some had their doubts, it was long considered to be verifiable proof of the monster's existence. That is, until January 1991, when Christian Sperling confessed that it was all a hoax. He and his father-in-law, a man named M.A. Wetherell, had concocted the scheme along with Wetherell's son and an insurance agent named Morris Chambers. They made the monster's head out of wood putty and a toy submarine, and had the photo sold to the Daily Mail. And with that, the world of cryptozoology was never the same. Number 12, Dennis Nielsen. Between 1978 and 1983, Scottish serial killer Dennis Nielsen strangled at least 12 men, and mostly disposed of their remains by flushing them down the toilet.
And he just turned around and looked at me and he said, 15 or 16.
In February of 1983, residents in Nielsen's building complained of plumbing problems. Upon investigation, experts found bones and human flesh blocking the system, specifically in a pipe leading to the top flat, which belonged to Nielsen. When police entered his house, they immediately noticed the smell of decomposition. Nielsen played innocent at first, but after a cop told him to stop, quote, messing about, he came clean and admitted there was a body in the wardrobe. With that startling confession, Dennis Nielsen's crime spree came to an abrupt end. Number 11, Eileen Waros.
So I have to come clean and tell the world
the lies that went on through my mouth.
Arguably the most infamous female serial killer, Eileen Waros was active in Florida for just 1 year, between 1989 and 1990. In that time, she engaged in sex work and killed 7 male clients before robbing them of their cash. There's a slight misconception of Waros as a sympathetic victim due to her traumatic upbringing, her claims of self-defense, and her portrayal in Monster, which her real-life acquaintances have criticized. In reality, Waros met the professional criteria for psychopathy, and she openly confessed to being a cold-blooded killer.
First-degree murder and robbery. As they said, they had it right. A serial killer.
While in court, Waros declared, quote, "I am guilty as can be. I want the world to know I killed these men, as cold as ice."
There's no self-defense. I'm really sorry what happened about everything. I was in this, to me, this world is nothing but evil.
Number 10, Ted Bundy. One of the world's most evil serial killers, upon his arrest in the mid-70s, he denied every count of assault, murder, and kidnapping brought against him.
My chance to talk to the press. Contrary to Section 78204 Florida statute, I'll plead not guilty right now.
It was only until immediately before his execution on January 24th, 1989, that he finally admitted to his crimes. In the weeks and months preceding the execution, he finally confessed to the crimes he was accused of in great detail. Bundy also admitted to revisiting the locations where he buried some of his victims' remains, and even owned up to crimes that the police didn't know about.
How deep was the grave?
Approximately 3 feet. 2 to 3 feet, maybe.
Despite this, Bundy's actual death toll could be much higher than we think. Number 9, Julian Altman. Some of the most valuable and revered musical instruments in the world are Stradivarius violins, antiques built in Italy hundreds of years ago. One in particular from 1713, currently known as the Gibson X Huberman Stradivarius, was stolen from a virtuoso called Bronisław Huberman in 1936 by struggling musician Julian Altman. For half a century, it remained lost, until on his deathbed, Altman confessed to his wife that he was in possession of the violin, telling her where to find it. His information proved true, and she received a $263,000 finder's fee. It was last sold to violinist Joshua Bell for almost $4 million.
It's a notorious instrument that I already knew about, so I played a few notes on it, and that was it. I was hooked.
Number 8, Margaret Gibson. In 1922, Hollywood director William Desmond Taylor was shot dead in his Los Angeles bungalow, a crime that went unsolved until 1964, when retired actress Margaret Gibson confessed to murder. Following a heart attack, Gibson knew she was about to die and told one of her neighbors that she had been the one to kill Taylor all those years ago. Police can neither prove nor disprove this admission, and while it doesn't conflict with the information they know about Taylor's murder, all of the police files relating to it had mysteriously vanished by the 1940s. Though Gibson did once become hysterical after seeing a piece about Taylor's unsolved murder on TV. Number 7, Naaman Diller's widow. In 1983, one of the most successful art heists in history was pulled off. At the time, police had few to no leads about who stole a collection of antique timepieces from the L.A. Meyer Institute for Islamic Art in Jerusalem. One of these pieces was owned by Marie Antoinette, the last queen of France, and was worth an estimated $30 million. Then in 2008, Nili Shamrat, the widow of notorious Israeli art thief Naaman Diller, was arrested after many of the stolen timepieces were found in her possession. Shamrat told police that Diller had confessed to her 4 years earlier on his deathbed and revealed the location of the stolen assets. She was only caught after she attempted to sell the pieces. Number 6, Carolyn Bryant. An icon of black civil rights, Emmett Till was visiting family in Mississippi when he was lynched after being accused of inappropriately flirting with a white woman named Carolyn Bryant. Bryant's husband, Roy Bryant, and his half-brother, J.W. Milam, kidnapped Till, killed him, and threw his body in the Tallahatchie River. An all-white jury acquitted Bryant and Milam of all charges. Shockingly, both men later profited by selling their confession to Look magazine for the modern-day equivalent of $43,000. The story sadly gets worse. In 2017, an historian named Timothy Tyson alleged that Carolyn Bryant had admitted to fabricating her accusation in a previous interview with him. If true, that would mean that the entire tragedy began over a monumental lie.
If they reopen the case because of the warrant, that somehow bits and pieces of the historical record might come together and tell us something more clear.
Number 5, James Brewer. Upon suffering a severe stroke in 2009, James Brewer was convinced he was going to die. As a result, he called the police in Tennessee with a shocking confession. Brewer admitted to fatally shooting Jimmy Carroll in 1977 because he thought Carroll was trying to steal his wife Dorothy. As it turned out, Brewer had actually been arrested in Tennessee shortly after the murder, but he escaped on bail and fled to Oklahoma, where he began living under a different name. But it appears the hands of justice were not quite ready to let him go. Following his confession, Brewer recovered from his stroke, after which he was arrested and charged with Carroll's murder. Number 4. Robert Durst. In 2015, HBO was making a 6-part documentary series called The Jinx about the murders Durst was accused of.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. And it's 5 after 4. Perfect timing.
The series ended with an apparent confession as he talks to himself while in the bathroom, unaware that his body mic was still switched on.
Kill them all, of course.
It recorded a confession where he literally says he, quote, killed them all, but there is some debate over whether or not this is admissible in court. On the one hand, he was aware of the microphone, while on the other, it was a spontaneous admission. To make matters even more complicated, he was also allegedly taking an illicit substance at the time of the interview. Number 3. Lance Armstrong. He's now one of the most famous dope fiends in sporting history, but there was a time when his confession to using performance-enhancing drugs shook the world. Armstrong winning the Tour de France 7 times consecutively aroused suspicions, and he finally admitted to what he was being accused of in a televised interview with Oprah.
Yes or no? In all 7 of your Tour de France victories, did you ever take banned substances or blood dope?
Yes.
The widely celebrated athlete had taken various cocktails of drugs to improve his cycling. Armstrong was completely unapologetic and even blamed the doping scandal on the cancer he had survived. In the interview, he told Oprah that after becoming so ill and then making a miraculous comeback, he just, quote, got carried away. Number 2. Bill Clinton. On the 26th of January 1998, the president famously declared that he, quote,
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
The woman in question was Monica Lewinsky, who worked as an intern at the White House before being relocated when she spent too much time with him. He went on to repeatedly deny the allegations for 7 months, even perjuring himself in court, before finally admitting that he did have, quote, a relationship with Ms. Lewinsky that was not appropriate.
It constituted a critical lapse in judgment and a personal failure on my part, for which I am solely and completely responsible.
The sex scandal was so huge, there were even attempts to have Clinton impeached, but he was ultimately acquitted of all charges and remained in office for 2 more years. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. Jeffrey Dahmer. The Milwaukee Monster's reign of terror finally came to an end when he was arrested on July 23, 1991. That night, an intended victim of Dahmer's escaped and led the police to his apartment, wherein they found several human remains, as well as numerous disturbing pictures.
And I acted on my fantasies, and that's where everything went wrong.
Over 60 hours of police interviews, Dahmer confessed to the murder of more than 17 men and boys over the course of 13 years.
Once I saw that I had no choice but to face it, I decided to face it head on and make a full confession.
Dahmer's confession was nearly 250 pages long, and he ultimately met his end at the hands of a fellow prison inmate in 1994.
I knew I was sick or evil or both. Now I believe I was sick.
What confession do you find the most chilling? Let us know in the comments.
During the hearing, Rder described the murders, showing little remorse and with no apology, to the horror of viewers.